I love me some Doug Pederson, but I have to remind myself he got fired in Philly a couple of years after winning a championship. Will that be a factor here in Jacksonville? I'll tell you in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, your host of Locked On Jaguars, where it's your daily podcast. It's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. I've covered this team now, I would say 10 and a half, 11 years through various entities, whether it be on terrestrial radio, podcasting, TV, even a little bit of written. I've done that as well. And I'm a Jacksonville native, so I kind of have my finger on the pulse of this team a little bit. And I'm going to talk today about Doug Pederson, the head coach, who, if you listen to this podcast, or even if you have not listened to this podcast, I am extremely fond of Doug Pederson. I like the way he does business. I like the way he talks up the game. He does not give you the typical cliche cookie cutter football answers to questions. He's not rude, but he exudes confidence, and the confidence radiates off of him, I would think, to the players, because it definitely has sort of penetrated me a little bit through my pores, where I can kind of feel that he's in charge. And he's a guy who's in charge. He doesn't have to sit there and tell you how in charge he is. So now that we've established the fact that I like Doug Pederson, I really had to sit and pinch myself a little bit and say, now, hold on, Wig. Make sure you're not getting too caught up in just how you feel about a person or giving someone too much cachet because they won a title. Coach McCarthy in Dallas has won a title, and you're not a big fan of Coach McCarthy. So you have to understand that sometimes just because people have certain accolades does not mean that they are what we think that those accolades represent. With Doug Pederson, is a little bit different, but I am cautious. So today, mainly in segment 2, I'll tell you some of the things that I believe went wrong in Philly while he was there, and why a team 2.5 years or whatever removed from winning a Super Bowl would get rid of their coach, especially a team that for decades and decades had a rabid fan base who had never won anything. And then when they finally won it, you would think that they would almost put the coach in deity territory, like he's untouchable. Has not happened. He has the same amount of Super Bowls as Mike Tomlin, same amount as Sean Payton, victories, that is. So why was he treated differently? And usually people say where there's smoke, there's fire. And if he's available, there's a reason. I just heard that somewhere yesterday, that if someone's a free agent or someone's available, if a coach is available, if he was in such high demand, why is he available? And also, in segment 3, what could prevent that from happening here in Jacksonville, or what could make it happen again? First, let me tell you the similarities between Jacksonville and Philly. They both have fan bases that if you poke them, they'll poke back, but when they poke back, they do it with razor blades. Not literally, but figuratively, especially on social media. The other thing is, Philly for a long time didn't win anything. They have won a Super Bowl. They didn't win anything on the field. But you never know it based on the attitude of their fans and the way that the fans conducted themselves. You would think that they won all the time, but they hadn't. Jacksonville fans are similar. Jacksonville fans love their team, travel well. You can't tell sometimes. I can. And if you're used to winning, you probably can tell that sometimes the fans act like they've never won anything, which is not an act because they have not ever won anything. So they'll be willing to sit and fight you on stuff that a winning organization would just let it roll off their shoulders and brush their shoulders off. The Jaguar fans aren't like that. The Jaguars will find any and everything. The Jaguar fans will find any and everything that is an advantage, and they will beat you upside the head with it. And they're very articulate, and they're very good at it. And, you know, somebody told me a long time ago, and this has come true. Never pick on a kid that has a lot to be, there's a lot of stuff you can pick on, because he's going to get his revenge when he gets older. I'm not talking about in a savage way. I'm talking about the fact that at some point, every insult you hurl at that person, they're going to take it, twist it, shake it up, master it. And they're going to be able to throw it back at you 10 different ways. The funniest people on earth are people who got picked at all the time. And now there's nothing you can say to hurt their feelings. And they are good at dishing it out. The Jaguar fan base continues to get picked at. The city keeps getting talked about. And somehow along the way, one of the skills and one of the strengths of this organization is they know how to talk crap, and they know how to get you off of them. I've had people from other markets that knew me DM me and beg me, Wig, get them off my back. No, because if I get them off your back, they're going to jump on my back. I'm not doing that. But next time, before you tweet something crazy, call me and ask me what's going to happen, and at least you can insulate yourself, and I'll give you a warning that the mob is coming, and they come hard. So Jaguar Twitter is something else. The other thing is Jaguar fans in person or something else, meaning I really don't think you need to be running up in the stands, or if you're from another city, don't come in here playing with Jacksonville. We had a dude beat up a guy in the bathroom in Tennessee, and he was surrounded by Titans fans, my man Cap. So whatever you heard about Duval and Jacksonville is real. What we're trying to do is get the team to play with that same fervor. Don't just say it, but mean it. They did it one year in 2017. We're hoping that Duval Way and that personality that we have in this city, it eventually gets to the point where it is something that the football team represents on the field and they win. Now, the parallel with Philadelphia is that's exactly what happened to Philly when they won the Super Bowl. I believe it was 2018, whenever they won the Super Bowl, I think it was 2019. When they won the Super Bowl and they beat the Patriots. And that's extremely significant, because I'll talk more about that in segment 2 when I start talking about how could you let the guy go that did that. But before we get to that, the city of Philadelphia, the team, when they won, they really had the personality, and they mirrored everything you know about Philly. I was actually in Philly I think I was in Philly that year for Army Navy, and it was amazing how there was a lot of confidence. There was just this feeling of you would not, by hanging down there at Xfinity Live before the game, it was, even though it was an Army Navy event, there were Eagles fans everywhere. And just by being in that city, you'd have never thought that this team is a team that had not won anything. They acted like they did not know that they had never won a championship. When they got there against the Patriots, they acted like they knew that they were going to win the game. And they did. And when they did it in Philadelphia fashion. What you saw on the field, coached by Doug Pederson, was actually, it was almost like an extension of the fans and the feeling. When all that thing came together, man, it was fantastic. So what happened? And why is it significant to Locked On Jaguars? Because we hope that it doesn't happen here. I'll tell you in segment 3 how it could and how it won't, hopefully. I just gave it away. I don't think it will. But I'll tell you, if it does happen, why. And I'll also tell you, if it doesn't happen, why. But first, we're going to talk about Philadelphia. We're going to talk about Doug Pederson, his impact on the Eagles, and why the impact was not big enough, in my opinion, to keep the Eagles from moving on past him. After I tell you about Blue Nile. You can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. There are 2 parts to this. It's wedding jewelry, and everyday fine jewelry, cocktail rings, gemstones, necklaces. I think you need to pay attention to both because you don't get married every day, but you do have things that you mark in time, and there's no better place to go than BlueNile.com. I want you to make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Jaguars listeners get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. The podcast exclusive includes engagement. What I mean by that is there's always someone there 24/7 that you can contact about your special piece. So that code is Locked On, and every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging. And it won't give away what's inside because you want to make this special moment a surprise, whether it's an engagement or just marking a moment in time for someone you love. Make sure you shop stress-free and find your forever piece by going to BlueNile.com today. All right, man, we're rolling along here on the Locked On Jaguars, and the NBA draft is coming up. It's today, it's tonight, it's Thursday, right? And if it's not Thursday, if you're listening to this podcast at some other point, then that means you missed it. But what we have going on is our live NBA draft show is not enough for Locked On. The entire NBA channel is going live on NBA draft night. So if you have a favorite team, you have to go to that team's Locked On page. Make sure you subscribe now to their Locked On YouTube channel so you get notified when they go live on draft night. Stars are made on the draft, man. Just think about it. Homegrown team in the NFL won the championship this year, so make sure you check that out. Philadelphia a few years back under the leadership of Doug Pederson with a backup quarterback, Nick Foles. I know you guys don't want to hear that name around here, but they won a championship. And they did it after never winning anything in football prior to that. They did it with an identity that resembled, their football identity resembled that city. And they did it with Doug Pederson as the head coach, being very creative and aggressive. And they did it by beating Bill Belichick and the dynasty that is the New England Patriots, quarterbacked by the GOAT, Tom Brady. How could all of these things happen and come together, do something that other people have failed to do 6 or 7 times, depending if you're talking about Belichick or Brady, and that is dethrone the team that has won more football championships in recent memory and any memory than anyone else? How were they able to do it? They came together. It was right timing. They had a I don't give a what attitude. They did not care. And all of these things came together, and they won it. And I anticipated there was going to be a long run of Philadelphia winning championships. Turns out, did not happen. It was not in the cards, and it was not what occurred. A couple of years later, after some failures by Carson Wentz as quarterback, some public disagreements between management and Doug Pederson, I wondered when I heard all of this stuff, and then I heard finally they fired Doug Pederson. Was a mutual partner in the ways he got fired. I thought, well, did success ruin this? Did folks get the big head? Did Doug Pederson go in and say, okay, I won your Super Bowl, now I'm demanding more power? Turns out he didn't. Did Howie Roseman or Jeffrey Lurie say, yeah, we won it, but this is how we want to win it? Turns out that probably wasn't true. And when you look at what has gone on since Doug Pederson left, the Eagles seems like they've drafted pretty well. They've handled the cap situation well. They amassed a bunch of draft picks. They made the playoffs last year. They spent a lot of money in free agency this year, and they look like a team that is going to try to make a run in the NFC East. So I can't say that they absolutely made a mistake by letting Doug Pederson go. But that doesn't mean that Doug Pederson wasn't a good coach. Sometimes in certain situations, things are only meant to happen for a season and they run their course. I was absolutely shocked when I found out that doing research for this podcast that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie actually picked a lot of the assistants on Doug Pederson's staff. To me, that's a big no-no. That's a problem. The problem is, with my assessment, is they won a Super Bowl doing it that way. Maybe Doug Pederson wanted to correct that a little bit because he knew as a coach that in order for them to continue winning, that him and his coaches had to be on the same page. For whatever it's worth, I don't think he's going to have those problems here. I told you to stick around to segment 3, and I'll get into more depth about that. But right now here in Jacksonville, I think Doug Pederson is the smartest football guy in the building. Not only do I think he's the smartest football guy in the building, I think everybody in the building knows it. So we got that straight right off the rip. He is the football guy. He is the number one football authority in that building. Jacksonville does not or did not or does not have the type of football character that Philly had. Not character, but I call it football character only because I'll just say it's football self-esteem. The football self-esteem that Philadelphia had prior to them winning the Super Bowl, because Philly was a team that you couldn't tell them that they didn't win anything. The Jaguars are a little bit different like that because the Jaguar fans themselves will tell you they haven't won anything. In fact, they've lost way more than they won. I think they have 4 or 5 winning seasons in 27 years. That's not good. Therefore, this fan base here is not delusional. They know exactly who they are and what they are. They just don't like somebody outside of the fan base telling them who they are and what they are. The Jaguars fans will rip and talk about the team all day. You, if you're not a Jaguar fan or a native of Jacksonville, cannot talk about the team and management all day, because if you do, the very people who talk about them all day will now come at you and defend them and tell you where you can go kick rocks at. So the thing is the unique part about this franchise is they make no pretenses. The fans make no pretenses of the fact that they're sick and tired and they want to win. What they've seen is they've seen Doug Pederson go into a situation that seemed impossible for other people and actually lived up to expectations and won a title. What the Jaguars will gladly do for a guy like Doug Pederson, what the fan base will gladly do, is he will win the court in the court of public opinion. They will tell Shad Khan and Trent Barker to go sat in the corner somewhere. And I didn't say sit. I mean sat, meaning you should have been there in the first place, and let Doug Pederson work. That's the difference. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into that. What could derail it? If you're a Jaguar fan, you don't want that to happen. And I also tell you what can actually prevent it from being derailed. I think it's very, very important that we go over those two things. And by the way, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think it's going to be prevented, and I'll expound on that in just a little bit after I tell you guys about BetOnline.net, because it's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. I'm sure they got futures right now on who's going to be picked where in the NFL draft, who's going to get traded. You need to go on there because they'll give you all the information that you need to set yourself up to make you some money. Don't take my word for it. Go to betonline.net because it remains the best spot for all your scores, podcasts, and news this season. It is the fastest and easiest way to check all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. There's a lot of news in golf about LIV and PGA. You need to check up on that. So head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more today about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Speaking of starting, that's what you do here with me every single day. You start your podcast with Locked On Jaguars, and we are absolutely grateful for you to do that. The first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Search now for Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts of Locked On NBA Big Board. The 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway. Make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today. You can do that before the draft actually starts to get an idea, see how, match yourself up against the experts, see if what they said is going to happen happens, or have some fun with it as the trades come in and turn in the NBA draft. So have fun with that. What could possibly go wrong in terms of Jacksonville? Jacksonville has always been the epitome and the definition of Murphy's Law. Anything that can and will go wrong absolutely will. I do think that there's a lot of optimism, though, especially for me in particular, when it comes to Doug Pederson, because I feel like he's the best coach they've had that I can remember. Tom Coughlin, the first time around, which is back in the late 90s, was very good before he went on to win 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. Jack Del Rio never was on board with Jack too much. And then, of course, they've gone through a litany of coaches since then, and none of them have seemed to work out. I'm a huge fan of Doug Pederson, not because he answers my questions when I ask him or because he treats the media well. I just don't think you need to be mean to people for no reason. You don't have to treat, and this ain't a shot at Tom, but it's about him. It's about Urban too. I just think in any profession, no matter who you are, where you are, at some point when you look out and there are a bunch of grown men who have grandchildren and kids who they put through college and they're paying mortgages and paying taxes and just doing their jobs, that you don't have to talk to people like they're kids. There, I said it. I just think that everybody's a human being, and if you're secure in who you are, you can talk to people and not be afraid to be vulnerable. So all of that mean stuff and all of that tough guy, want to act like you've been in the military but never served a day in your life stuff goes right out of the window, because with people like me, I look at it as a sign of weakness. So being just human, yeah, he's won points for me that way, but that's not why. This ain't about me. I don't think that that's the reason why he'll be successful. I think he'll be successful because, one, he's had the chance to pick his own staff. Okay? The staff has his imprint on it. So even if you have some sort of short-term success, you won't have these moments where you think you need to absolutely upgrade or change things, because sometimes you can win. The broke clock is right twice a day. You can win and you can do things, but even though you knew things weren't absolutely right, I think he's a guy that just wants to have everything right, and he wants to do that by having his staff. I think another thing is he's really insulated himself with a lot of guys who have been head coaches or coordinators on offense, and they all come from sort of the same pedigree that he does, and it's based on it starts with the one of the big foundation blocks is their experience with quarterbacks, that being Mike McCoy, Press Taylor, Jim Bob Cooter, and of course Doug himself. And I think he's done that because he realizes what everyone else knows, and that the number one asset on this team is Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence, as Trevor Lawrence goes, and the more comfortable Trevor Lawrence gets, the better it'll be for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So from that, I really get it. I also think that him and Trent Barker, who I'll mention in a little bit, I think they have sort of an understanding. I think for all the things that you've heard about Trent Barker in the past, I think a lot of those things went away because Trent Barker kind of knew, and it was out there, and everybody around the league. You had people who weren't even natives of Jacksonville who were talking about Barker and his reputation and how awful he was at his job. Well, he sort of redeemed himself a little bit, at least so far, with the last 2 drafts, as well as some of the moves that he's made in free agency, and his ability to sort of recover his image, whether it's hanging out with people here at the beach or being in press conference and looking unbothered, and also the one voice that we have in Doug Pederson. I think things have really, really gone well. And Trent is the type of guy who he's going to stick with what he sticks to. And what he sticks to is making sure that he drafts guys that have a size and athletic profile. He's done it at every turn, whether it works or not. You know what he's getting. He's not throwing stuff against the wall. He's pretty much stuck to that. They did extend the staff too. They hired a former assistant GM, a new assistant GM who worked with Trent over in San Francisco. So I think it's a major time for Trent Barker to have a chance to redeem himself and not make mistakes that he's made in the past with Jim Harbaugh. And I think Jacksonville could benefit from that. What could go wrong? Let's stay right there. What could go wrong is they have a little bit of success and Trent Barker wants to think that it's all about Trent Barker, or that someone with an ego wants to step up and say, I did this. Once again, I think Trent Barker learned his lesson from that in the past, and I don't think that's going to happen this time. That's why I believe that Doug Pederson works out here. I think he works out here. I think starting from the very beginning in Philly when they chose some of his staff, and granted, he probably agreed to it because you want a job just that bad, and maybe he said, okay, when I win, and this is just me speculating, but when I win and if I win, they'll trust me enough that they'll allow me to do some things. Those things weren't allowed, so therefore, that along with probably Carson Wentz not continuing to develop hurt his chances. Another thing that could derail this tenure here for Jacksonville is this. If Trevor Lawrence doesn't develop the way folks hope, you're going to be hard pressed to get people to believe that a guy who was thought of as highly as Trevor Lawrence is at fault or just wasn't as good as you thought. They're gonna find a way because the feeling of Trevor is different from, say, a guy like Jameis Winston. There are a lot of people that didn't believe in Jameis Winston. So therefore, when Jameis started throwing interceptions, it was like, see, we told you. But just about everybody, outside of a few people, Chris Sims and a couple of other people, everybody pretty much believes in Trevor Lawrence. If it doesn't work, it's probably more of a situation where they're going to point at the coach or the staff and the system than they will the player because of what they already have predetermined in their mind is about Trevor Lawrence's ability. And they got a whole big thing that they can point at. They can go, there's Trevor and Carson Wentz. See, you did it to two of them. You did it to two straight guys who were chosen at the top of the draft. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you have to worry about that because I think Trevor Lawrence is going to work out just fine. If Trevor Lawrence works out just fine, that means Doug Pederson is going to work out just fine. And whatever happened in Philadelphia will stay in Philadelphia, and the Jaguars will prosper. I thank you for listening to the Locked On Jaguars podcast and making us your first listen on this day. We got another show coming up for you tomorrow. I got a surprise for y'all next week. I'm going to tell you about the one next week. I couldn't do it this week because he's on vacation. There's been a lot of try to separate Jaguars and Gators. I remember when this organization started, you had people at the game with Gator stuff on. Because I'm here in North Florida, and even though I'm a supporter of the Florida State Seminoles, there are a lot of fans who cheer for the Florida Gators on Saturday and then cheer for the Jaguars on Sunday. Both teams have been down lately. Both teams are looking up with new coaches to try to move into a new direction. I'm going to talk to Brandon Olson, who covers Locked On Gators, at some point next week when he comes back off vacation. And we're going to compare the two situations where both of these teams, one is in North Florida, one is sort of like a little south into the west, but it's sort of like North Central Florida. We're in Northeast Florida. But there's two teams that at some point the Jaguars have a share. I would say at least half the Jaguar fans are Gator fans. The rest of y'all, I'm here too, so y'all are welcome to sit here and listen to it and be around because I'm not going to let him off easy because, like I said, I'm a Seminole supporter. However, we're going to talk about the unique situation of both teams trying to get back to where their fans think that they should rightfully be with brand new coaches and brand new regimes, and we'll talk about that. So until tomorrow, we'll have another show for you tomorrow. I'm looking for some news. I got something in the bag, but stick in tomorrow. Maybe I'll answer some of your questions on Mailbag that I put out this week. The hashtag is LOJ Camp, Locked On Jaguars Camp. All of your camp questions, I'll take them. Make sure you use the hashtag. And when you tweet at me, LOJ Camp, and we'll answer some of those questions on the Mailbag on tomorrow. Until then, you guys take care of each other. Thanks for making us your first listen, and we'll see you on another edition of Locked On Jaguars.